Hey guys, if you're uncomfortable with the topic of brainwashing, mind control, and human experimentation, please consider this a content warning. Now that we've got that aside, let's get into this video.
Agency of enforcement. We function as gatherers of information.
Now, we all know that governments do shady things. But what if I told you between 1953 and 1975, the Office of Scientific Intelligence Branch, OSI, of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, performed a series of experiments on humans intended to essentially break the mind. Of course, they wanted to break the mind for CIA reasons, mostly interrogation and war tactics. And furthermore, most of these experiments were just straight up illegal.
Oh. Well, who'd have thunk it?
If I skipped this intro and just said I was talking about Mkultra, you probably go, oh, I know what that is, and no. No. You just know the tippy top of what Mkultra really was. Allow me to dive into what Mkultra really was. I will have links to the sources that I used, mostly being Wikipedia, because, well, it's a really good source on some of these issues, but there's some other sources as well. Let me set the scene for you. Early Cold War America. So, a drug called LSD, or lysergic acid diethylamide, was made by Albert Hofmann, a German scientist, in 1938. This substance has mind-altering effects, making you more suggestible to certain things. And for that reason, it is my favorite drug, and the drug of choice for many other people. And if you're one of those people, means I love you. And good vibes. Now, the CIA picked up on this, and in 1953, the operation began. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and I hope I am pronouncing that right, was the head of the operation. Its aim was to develop mind-controlling drugs for use against the Soviet bloc. The Soviet bloc being like the communist countries, like the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, and a few other countries. Vietnam. A few other countries. Of course, to be fair, other countries had basically been doing these types of experiments, dating back as far as Nazi German scientists using mescaline on prisoners in the Dachau concentration camp. The CIA was interested in manipulating foreign leaders with such techniques. Now you might be thinking, Jesus, that is fucked up. But remember, the Cold War was a fucked up time, and the CIA is a fucked up place. Keep that in the back of your head as I continue on with what I say, okay? It's gonna be crucial to the rest of this video. Author Stephen Kinzer proposes evidence of the continuation of the Nazi agenda, citing, quote, the CIA's recruitment of Nazi torturers and vivisectionists to continue the experimentation on thousands of subjects, and Nazis brought to Fort Detrick, Maryland, to instruct CIA officers the lethal use of sarin gas. Which really doesn't sound too odd when you consider that Nazis were brought over to help us with our rockets. Werner von Braun. Oh, sorry, I had something in my throat. There were other related programs, such as MK Search, but they were basically the same, but much, much more in depth. They had an estimated $10 million, which would have been $87.5 million adjusted for inflation. What did they do with this seemingly endless budget? Let's get into that. This is where we get into the really fucked up parts of this. So, yeah. If you don't want to continue, fine. Understood. Just giving you that warning. Shit's gonna get weird. Early efforts focused on LSD-25, which for those who don't know, is that good shit. That Gucci shit. When we're talking about acid. Which quickly became the dominant drug in Mkultra's projects for that reason. Originally, they wanted to see if they could make people defect against their will. And they also wanted to see if the Soviets could do the same. Because, of course, they thought that, obviously, if we're going to be torturing our people, the Soviets are going to be doing it as well. And to be fair, they were, to be fair. One of the big things they did was administering LSD to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and sex workers. To quote, people who could not fight back, as one Agent C member who remains anonymous said. In one case, they gave LSD to a Kentucky man for a consecutive 174 days, which... I'm sorry, but that had to be utter fucking hell. I feel so sorry for that man and what he must have went through. One thing I should add is that the CIA didn't properly dose their patients. A typical LSD trip consists of a person ingesting about 100 to 150 micrograms of LSD. Now, of course, you can take more, you can take less, but on average, you're probably taking about 100 to 150 in that ballpark of micrograms of LSD. The CIA was just eyeballing the amounts they were administering, so God knows how much LSD these poor souls were taking. Researching this really, like, sunk my heart. Because, like, just reading what they were doing. They also administered LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, and members of the general public to study their reactions. Which brings me to a side tangent. This is from an article that I found. The article was on herb.com. I'm paraphrasing, but Alfred Hubbard was considered to be like the Johnny Appleseed of acid. A documentary revealed that he was able to dose more than 6,000 people before LSD was effectively banned in '66. Among those influenced by his supply included counterculture icons, including Timothy Leary, Aldous Huxley, and Stanley Kubrick. But it only took one of the subjects to launch a countercultural revolution. As the 60s struggled to find its way out of boring black and white into Technicolor, the man who pushed it over the edge was undoubtedly Ken Kesey and his band of merry pranksters. Together they rode across the country in a painted bus called Further, introducing America to tie-dye, free love, and the electric Kool-Aid acid tests, which Kesey would become legendary for. From his home in La Honda, California, Kesey would inspire a band known as the Warlocks to become psychedelic icons, the Grateful Dead, while partying with the likes of Hunter S. Thompson. So yeah, the CIA's fuck-up brought us to counterculture. Thanks, CIA! It's just sarcasm, but only slightly. I thought I would bring this up because it gets quite darker as we continue. LSD and other drugs were often administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent, which is a violation of the Nuremberg Code, which the U.S. agreed to follow after World War II, which, if you are wondering, are crimes against humanity. You can't violate the Nuremberg Code. But hey, a lot of countries do, all the time. One such example, in Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels within agency safe houses in San Francisco to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. A bunch of good old cucks. The men were drugged with acid, and the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors. The sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. In other experiments, where people were given LSD without their knowledge, they were interrogated under bright lights with doctors in the background taking notes. They told their subjects that they would quite literally extend their trips if they refused to reveal their secrets. The people under these interrogations were, yet again, CIA employees, military personnel, and agents suspected of being no good, dirty commies. Long-term debilitation and several deaths resulted from this. Also, heroin addicts were bribed into taking acid with offers of more heroin, so, yeah. Thanks, CIA. Good for you. At the invitation of the Stanford psychology graduate Vic Lovell, an acquaintance of Richard Alpert and Allen Ginsberg, Ken Kinsey volunteered to take part in what turned out to be a CIA-financed study under the aegis of Mkultra. The project studied the effects of psychoactive drugs, particularly LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, cocaine, AMT, and DMT. The Office of Security used LSD in interrogations, but Dr. Gottlieb, the chemist, had other ideas. He thought it could be used in covert operations. Since the effects were temporary, he believed it could be given to high-ranking officials. In this way, affect the course of important meetings, and essentially brainwash leaders into doing shit for America. Since he realized there was a difference in testing drugs in a laboratory and using it in clandestine operations, he initiated a series of experiments where LSD was given to people in normal settings without warning. At first, everyone in technical services tried it. A typical experiment involved two people in a room where they observed each other for hours and took notes. Fuck. As the experiment progressed, a point arrived where the outsiders were drugged with no explanation whatsoever, and surprise acid trips became somewhat of an occupational hazard among CIA operatives. Adverse reactions often occurred, such as an operative who received a drug in his morning coffee? What? Why? Well, why? Why would they do that? I mean, it's the CIA, I'm not really questioning it. Became psychotic and ran across Washington, seeing a monster in every car passing him. The experiments continued even after Frank Olson, an Army chemist who had never taken acid, was covertly dosed by a CIA supervisor, and 9 days later jumped off a 13-story New York City hotel room, his house, supposedly after a deep depression induced by the drug. According to Stephen Kinzer, Olson had approached his supervisor sometime earlier, doubting the morality of the project and asked to resign. Now you might be thinking, I've seen that somewhere, and you'd be right. That is the plot of Netflix's miniseries, Wormwood, which was based off of Olson's death. Now it must be noted that not every patient was non-consensual, just the vast majority of them. There were also declassified documents suggesting that the CIA was trying to hypnotize patients to make them have induced panic attacks. Overall, this program was really, really fucking sus. The CIA also had black sites in countries, so they could not be persecuted by law. Yet again, thanks, CIA. You're really showing us who's boss. Aftermath. In 1973, amid a government-wide panic caused by Watergate, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all Mkultra files destroyed. Pursuant to this order, most of the documents regarding the project were destroyed, making a full investigation fucking impossible. Because, of course, a cache of about 20,000 documents survived, and they have been incorrectly stored in a record building and were discovered in 1977. These documents were fully investigated during the Senate hearings of 1977. Given the lack of info of the destruction of these files, we do not know how many people died. But I really don't think that matters, as psychological damage is much more severe than death. At least when you die, that's it. It's over. We know of at least tens of thousands of people were subject to these experiments. Most likely more. So many innocent people were driven to literal insanity, and the CIA was never really punished for this. Well, the CIA did another oopsie. That was the government's response. The hearings were useless, as the damage had already been done. And that is the story of Mkultra, one of the most well-known conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. I want to thank the people who have been watching my videos, who have been liking and sharing and commenting. It really motivates me to continue making videos like this. Please consider supporting me on my Patreon. Link in the comments.